Welcome back to another episode of the Water Matters podcast. I'm Matthew Rolf, and I'm the host of the Water Matters podcast. If you're joining me for the first time, you are very welcome. Thanks for listening. This is episode 14, and I'm sat here. It's the end of May, or just approaching the end of May, as we release this episode, and it has, for the first time in a long time, been raining a little bit here in the UK. Depending on where you are, I'm sure you've seen a little bit of rain. It hasn't quite ruined the bank holiday weekends as people predicted, such that we're used to in the UK, but it's definitely in places been raining, which of course people have noticed because it hasn't rained for such a long time. And we, in our business, in the day job here at our business Graf UK Limited, selling rainwater harvesting systems, water butts, and many sustainable water management related products. This is something we are very tuned in on because, believe it or not, when it doesn't rain, we sell more water butts, above ground tanks, even below ground tanks. And I think it's nothing more than the fact that people are suddenly tuned in to wanting to capture the rain when it does actually fall. Because even though I think in the majority we all enjoy this warmer weather, the dry days, however long it lasts for, we know that the rain is going to come because we're here in England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and it just is going to rain eventually, as it has started to do so. And so when it does, especially on a year that has started as dry as this year has, we get tuned into the fact that actually it might be a sensible idea to collect it when it does rain so that we can store it in our gardens and put it to good use should there be a drought this summer or hose pipe bans in certain areas. There is already talk of them. Perhaps one has already found its way to your area. But of course, in those situations where there is a hose pipe ban, collecting rainwater and putting it to good use in your garden to keep your flowers alive and to use it for whatever you want to use it for, washing your car, irrigating your lawn, all that sort of stuff. Rainwater is very, very useful. And that is why for episode 14 of the Water Matters podcast, we're going to devote this episode to learning more about rainwater harvesting. So, as I just referred to, in our day job here at Graf UK, it is a specialist subject of ours. We know a lot and talk a lot about rainwater harvesting. And I'm lucky to have access to a lot of video footage from our team members here, mostly Callum, our head of marketing, and David Stagg, our one of our technical product specialists on the rainwater harvesting product group, talking a lot about rainwater harvesting, and many videos have been shared on our YouTube channel at Graf UK, and a lot of them have been watched by a lot of our self-build customers in particular who choose to install rainwater harvesting systems in their new build properties, and as well as general homeowners who want to put rainwater harvesting only rainwater harvesting systems into their properties to make the use of the rainwater that they can capture off their roofs. And so what you're going to hear in this episode is a compilation of some of the most helpful, useful, and most viewed videos from our team so that you can learn more about rainwater harvesting in case you are also sat there listening to this at the end of May or beginning of June thinking, actually, I do have a very dry, sort of brown already garden that does need a bit of water. I am very conscious that it's not something to use mains water for because it is a waste of mains water. Because whether it's raining now or was raining yesterday or perhaps is going to rain tomorrow, it will rain at some point, and it would just be very sensible to put something in place at your home to capture some of that rain so that you can then store it and use it, put it to good use at a later date. So we're going to begin with a video entitled "What is the Purpose of Rainwater Harvesting?" Which I feel like is a good place to start. So let's find out what Callum and David have to say on the subject of why rainwater harvesting and what's the purpose of it.
I think we can kind of delve into this question quite deeply. Well, you need to think about it, I think, in two different approaches. The first one I would think about is, of course, on a global scale. What rainwater harvesting means globally is far different to what we may consider here in the UK. Globally, of course, where there isn't really access to mains water, rainwater is potentially the only access to water for certain individuals. So for them, it's their life source, it's their most precious commodity um, that they can get hold of. Bring it back to us here more locally, we're very fortunate to have access to clean, fresh drinking water on the tap via mains water. And yeah, the need for rainwater is not quite so much because we are so lucky to have that. But we are, of course, coming into a period of time where urban developments and the industry of construction is growing so fast that all of the old systems that we have in place are coming very stretched in terms of the demand and how much we're utilizing them. And we need to try and find other sources of water to help substitute from the excessive mains water that we use in our everyday lives for whatever it may be, for the different appliances, toilets, showers, you name it. We are very greedy, and it's kind of scary to think that if you were to like take a step back and go on a bit more of a adventurous holiday, like you go camping for a couple of weeks or you go out, go touring across Europe, and you don't have like access to a tap or a shower where you can just flip a valve and hey presto, you've got water. It kind of puts everything back into perspective. When you get home, you think, oh my goodness, just having that accessibility is, I'm very fortunate to have that. But yeah, with the ever-growing population, certainly here in the UK, we've got a big growth in terms of cities, and of course we've got lots of people coming into the country to take the opportunity of living in a very free environment that we have in the UK, free in terms of lifestyle. So yeah, the demand on rainwater could be really looked at in terms of helping substitute towards the mains water appliances that we use it for. So as we've discussed on this channel multiple times before, rainwater can be used to really substitute quite a lot of our mains water consumption. And really rainwater harvesting in terms of a purpose is try and really support where mains water is not requirements, use rainwater instead. So whether this be for irrigating your lawn or using it back to flush toilets, using it in your washing machine to clean your clothes, there are quite a few applications in terms of just standard rainwater we can use it for. And of course, you can treat rainwater locally on site to make it a better quality, so then you can use it for other applications as well. So rainwater is really probably the future, unless we can get mains water more readily available to our homes to be used.
Okay, a very in-depth video there, or audio if you're listening to this whilst driving or walking or whatever, as to the purpose of rainwater harvesting. Hopefully, you now have a full, detailed understanding of why you might be interested in adding a rainwater harvesting system to your property. But the next question that you might be asking is, if I'm going to install a rainwater harvesting system, should it be an above ground tank or does it have to be a below ground tank? So an appropriate question, and here's the answer.
I think this customer appreciates that an above ground solution is certainly a lot more easier to install, and of course it's potentially cheaper in terms of its maintenance and servicing going forward. But I think the important thing with there's probably three things I'd like to mention when we talk about underground tanks. And the first thing I think is that we are putting the tank into a more controlled environment. So the tank itself is not subject to UV. I mean, you could put your above ground tank in an area which is not susceptible to sunlight, of course. But of course, being underground, we're going to avoid sunlight directly imposing on the tank. And with UV lights, not only, of course, we have increase in temperature. With these two things, we generally help promote the growth of potentially some microorganisms in the underground tank. So being underground in a dark location, the temperature fluctuations are going to be minimalized. So we are preventing the growth of these microorganisms. But of course, when we talk about above ground tanks versus underground tanks, when we have an above ground tank, that's at floor level, it's going to be located somewhere We get very decorative water butts these days that some people might make a feature of in their garden. I mean, we do a whole exclusive range of them. But of course, that water butt is also taking up space. With an underground tank, of course, we have the tank fully submerged. We have our relatively discreet cover. I mean, it can be installed in a garden. It can go in the driveway. So that space, which is otherwise potentially used for an above ground tank, of course, is underground, and can be used for applications like potentially parking your car over the top of it. So I think that's something else that is a really big advantage to an underground tank versus above ground tank.
And even though the above ground tank could be from a perspective that could be more easily maintained because it's above ground, that might not necessarily be the case, because with an underground rainwater harvesting system, like we mentioned earlier with the Eco Plus system, that's an external basically control element to the tank, which is more easy to maintain as it is anyway.
Yes. I think it's important for people to consider all options whenever we talk about any sort of solution. I mean, at the end of the day, the customer is paying their good money to implement a solution. They need to implement a solution which is going to best suit their requirements. So just going online and picking the one that's you think looks the nicest, by all means, please do that. But take a step back. Think about where it needs to go in the garden. What you're going to use it for. Do you want to use it in the winter months of the year? All these sorts of things. You need to properly understand that rainwater solution and what applications you want to use it for. And then, of course, best the one that's going to basically be most suitable, that ticks all your boxes, and then you'll be in a much better position going forwards.
So again, a thorough explanation of the differences between an above ground option and a below ground tank. The key here, from my perspective, is rainwater harvesting is a good idea, whether it's done above ground or below ground. The key is harvest some rainwater. It's your choice as to whether it is a permanent enough addition to your home that you choose to bury it underground, and typically that would be a bigger tank so that you can store more water, make full use of it, or to go for the much easier, quicker solution, which is an above ground tank. But from that video or that audio, you now have an understanding of the pros and cons of both. If you do go for an underground tank, your next question might be, how do I access the water in my underground tank for the garden? And so let's find out more about that.
With the Graf system, we generally have multiple different external connection points that you consider. Other than, of course, putting plumbing pipework in for outside bib taps, you could consider having internal hose connection points and tap pillars. You could also have connections to fountains if you wanted to. Generally speaking, the pump in the tank will, of course, only operate when we have a call for water. Multiple outlet points can be, of course, connected up. It's just running multiple points at the same time. They just need to consider, of course, the flow rate of the water. Really, on that, it's really something to, again, talk about what we talked about at the beginning of today. Is really consider whether the customer wants to have the outlet point on their project. If they wanted to have one at the front of the building or at the back of the building, you could have potentially external hose connection points 200 meters off down the garden for them to plug into as well, with the opening of the tap. So again, kind of it comes involved with the design of the project. Outlet points are really how we're going to access the water with the pump in place. As soon as that call for water is made, that outlet will provide the water. So again, really is quite a nice feature to have a rainwater harvesting system, and multiple outlet points are certainly possible from one system alone.
So there you have it. That is how you access the water from your underground rainwater harvesting tank for use in your garden. Now, an important part of rainwater harvesting is the filtration of the water from when it hits your roof, runs down your guttering, down the downpipes, into the rainwater harvesting tank, whether that's above ground or below ground. It is important that the rainwater does go through some sort of filter to keep it as clean as possible when it is stored in your above ground or below ground tank. So a next appropriate question would be, what type of filter do you need? So let's find out.
With filters, we generally need to consider what we are intending to use the rainwater first for initially, I think. Typically here at Graf, we would favour using a basket filter if it's going to be a garden system only. with the basket filter, you generally get 100% catchment, as well as, of course, so you get a much better quality of water filtration as well. So we would look at that first. If it's a house system, we would look towards a self-cleaning filter. There's probably a lot more water demand through a house filter supply. So having that self-cleaning capability is quite beneficial. So we would kind of steer in that direction if we could. You may be forced into using a basket filter, which is the preferable solution if we're discharging into ground via a soakaway, just because we want to retain any leaves and debris which may get washed down those incoming drainage pipes into the tank. We want to keep them in that filter instead of washing them over into the soakaway. So that's what we would look at. In terms of the size of filter, we generally increase the size of the filter due to the pipe diameter, and the pipe diameter is dictated on the catchment area. So that's also something to bear in mind as well. But that's generally what I would encourage people to look at in terms of filters when they're looking at implementing their system.
Okay, at this point, you have got some clean, stored rainwater in either an above ground or below ground tank. Especially if you've chosen to have an underground tank and you can store a larger volume of water and keep it at in the right conditions, the right temperature, ready to be used for multiple applications throughout the home and garden. The next question that you might be asking yourself is, what can you use that rainwater for?
Hopefully we discussed this quite a bit at the beginning of the presentation. So the standard rainwater applications we would certainly look at here in the UK, if you're looking in accordance with the regulation, the British standard, would be the toilets, the washing machine, outside cleaning, and irrigation. Those are the primary ones. You can further treat the water, as we said, to disinfect it with carbon filters, UV and microfilters. Basically, this is taking out any impurities in the water, any microorganisms, and then you can use it for the other possible appliances, essentially like your dishwasher or your showers, for example. So, of course, here in the UK, we've got the technology to really improve on, make the water quality better. Of course, we compare that to outside of the UK, where they're not so advanced in the more rural locations of the world. Of course, rainwater is probably the most cleanest source of water they can get hold of. So in their case, they would probably just drink it where they can. But here we try to we've got the ability to look after ourselves, so we should.
So drinking your harvested rainwater stored in your tank is a no-no. Important to recognize that there are many uses for rainwater, which are, throughout the garden, irrigating the lawn, watering your plants. If you are going to take it back into the property, flushing toilets, you can plumb it to your washing machine. You can certainly put it to an outside tap and use it for cleaning water inside and outside the home. But very important to remember that potable water, mains water, should be used for showering, for drinking, for your dishwasher, for washing dishes, anything that comes into sort of human contact, especially human consumption, should be mains water, potable water, and not harvested rainwater. One question that is asked often for people that are already living in their house, they're happy with their house, they're not building their house from scratch, but they want to add a rainwater harvesting system to it, is can you retrofit a rainwater harvesting system to an existing building? So let's find out some more about that.
It does lean into it somewhat, because certainly when we were talking about offsetting, this again, rainwater harvesting, adding on to an existing development is a way to offset potentially for something else that you're working on. But to bring it back kind of more in line with retrofitting, it is something that you can certainly achieve. You want to really consider what you want to use the rainwater harvesting for. If it's just going to be for outside irrigation and cleaning purposes, of course, that's a very straightforward system to install, because you're just going to take the water from your rainwater harvesting tank and then just plumb it to like an outside bib tap or some sort of extraction point, which is going to be readily available for when you want to draw water from the tank. So that's relatively easy to install and then pull water from the tank. If you're then going to if you're considering bringing that water back in to support something like a washing machine, or you're looking for toilets, retrofitting is slightly more tricky because you've got existing plumbing in place, and you really need to take into consideration things like cross contamination between mains water and rainwater. So it's still plausible, but there are certain things that you do need to look at, so you're not going to accidentally contaminate the mains water line with the rainwater. So it might just be that you decide to supplements like an outside toilet in an outbuilding, or if you've got your washing machine in your garage, for example, just plumb it in there, then you can isolate the mains water supply coming in, so it's purely off your rainwater system. Then that's the way to do it. With rainwater harvesting systems, we've discussed many times before, they're always going to prioritize the use of rainwater first, and then you could incorporate a mains water backup supply if you wanted to. And the activation of that is kind of controlled via some sort of float sensor in the tank. So there are options to, of course, use the rainwater for other appliances in the property, but you need to be a little bit mindful about cross contamination. And in terms of retrofitting rainwater harvesting systems, just go for it. It's a super way, certainly, to support the outside irrigation options, whether it be for just or cleaning your car, whatever it may be. Retrofitting, even if it's just a small tank. We talked about water butts earlier today, where you can get relatively smaller sizes, say 300-500 litres. Small rainwater harvest systems generally start at around about 1,500 litres. So even with a small tank, if you're just going to use it for our garden irrigation, that can supplement your supply by anything from like 25-30% of your mains water. So it can have a huge impact in terms of the environmental benefits and potentially saving on your mains water bill as well.
So whether you have retrofitted it to your existing property or you have added it to your new build, once you've got a rainwater harvesting system, one question that does pop up now and then, and we have had customers experience this, is a slight discoloration of the water, particularly if you are taking it back into the property and you are using it to flush toilets. So let's find out more about, can discoloration of the water occur in a rainwater harvesting system, and what should you do if that happens?
Discoloration is to do with the introduction of impurities into the tank. So with the collection of rainwater off a roof, or potentially if you're collecting rainwater off a surface like a patio or pavement, you are channeling that water down into the collection device. Now, depending on how clean that surface is, you're introducing impurities. It could just be dirt and grit. It could be oil if it's coming off a car park. With the introduction of these impurities, you are going to discolor the water in the tank. The tank itself, the water that's in there, should remain clean if the catchment area is clean. So it's only by introduction of the catchment area that water will become discolored in the tank.
Another helpful question is, what happens during periods of no rainfall, such as the few months that we've had so far in 2025? Once you've got your rainwater harvesting system fitted, what does happen to it when it doesn't rain for a period of time?
Now, with sizing of rainwater harvesting systems, it's very much looked at in terms of the location of where the rainwater harvesting tank is and the daily storage event you want to allow for. So in most situations, if the system is sized correctly, you shouldn't run out of rainwater in the underground tank. In such events that we do run out of that, we do have the option of a mains water top-up supply. This comes in many forms, whether it be a mains water supply directly to the underground tank under gravity. You could look at having, if you're looking at a loft header tank installation, you'd have a mains water supply directly to the loft tank. So that would then, of course, top up under pressure should the rainwater reduce to the bottom of the tank as empty. And then with a more mounted pump kiosk with the float switch or float dispenser, that will detect the level of water in the underground tank once again. And of course, we'll then have a valve opening to redirect the water directly off the mains until we have an rainfall event to refill the underground tank. So with rainwater harvesting systems, it's very much an automated process. Whether it be a header tank system or a direct feed system, we've very much got a method to ensure we've always got some form of water going to the appliances.
Okay, so important to remember that if you just have a garden-only rainwater harvesting system fitted in your property, or you add one to it, there will not automatically be a mains water top-up to a garden system, simply because if we're in a hosepipe ban situation, you don't want to be able to confuse the mains water with the rainwater. So rainwater only would be going into that underground tank, so much as the case with a water butt. Rainwater only or only rainwater goes into a water butt, you're never topping that up with mains water. So that if you are then using a hose pipe or using watering cans, from your water tank, especially if you're connecting a hose pipe to it, then you have proof that you're using only rainwater and not using mains water in that sort of hose pipe ban situation. Now, hopefully, that summary of questions, FAQs relating to rainwater harvesting has been useful. One final video that I'm going to show you, or audio that you're going to listen to now, is answers the question, where can you look to find out answers to any other questions that you might have about rainwater harvesting?
So you can visit our website, grafuk.co.uk, which says all on our blog page, all sorts of questions and articles about rainwater harvesting. And you can really start the research from there about what is rainwater harvesting, the different types of systems, so a direct or indirect. All your questions can be found in those articles. Or if you visit our YouTube channel, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you'll find all the videos about rainwater harvesting after that. And that's also got product demonstrations of how the systems work, so you get a better understanding of how they could work in your property, and also about rainwater harvesting in general. Like I said, about how we size the systems, what sort of system might be best for you in terms of a direct or indirect, or whether you just want to use it for garden irrigation only, and also what is rainwater harvesting and the benefits of it, so you can truly understand why rainwater harvesting is so important.
So there you have it. As Callum has shared there is much more information, lots more questions, lots more videos on the Graf UK YouTube channel. Also on grafuk.co.uk, there is a knowledge library, there is a knowledge hub that is broken down by the different product groups. And so rainwater harvesting has its own sort of subheading in the menu. There's a video library, there's blog articles, there's lots and lots of more information on there. So if you do have further questions, if you want to do further research into rainwater harvesting to find out if it is an appropriate solution to add to your property and help with your sustainable water management, I do suggest that you go there. You can also find out, of course, lots of other information. The UK Rainwater Management Association, another group that we're part of, there is a lot of information on their website too. And so there's a lot of information online that will help you with your decision-making process about rainwater harvesting. The key is to remember that it is very sensible, very simple, and if everyone did it collectively, we would be in a better place from a sustainable water management perspective. So I hope that has been useful. I hope that you have learnt something on this episode of the Water Matters podcast. Please do continue to visit watermatters.life. That is our website that contains articles that we add every week, certainly every couple of days. We're adding new content, new articles to the watermatters.life website. And then if you do want to subscribe, you can simply put your email address in there, and then you will receive our fortnightly Water Wednesdays email newsletter that contains the best of the articles shared and links to previous episodes of the podcast. And that is where you can stay up to date with the topics and discussions that we are having with readers and listeners of the Water Matters podcast and community. And so please do remember to share this, to like, to subscribe. Stay tuned for future episodes of the podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back with you very soon.